Selamat siang. Welcome back to another Bali COVID-19 update. This is April 3rd, 2022, and my name is Bruce. And let's take a look at the weather. Of course, the wind speed today, small breeze, 5.2 kilometers per hour. Temperature 29.8 degrees and humidity 75%. It's going to rain again, and it has been raining every day again. But now that we're in April, well, maybe the dry season is going to come soon. I hope so. Tourists are still arriving in Bali. Good news, there are now 9 airlines flying here, and there's a segment on Turkish Airlines down here below, and 9 airlines: Garuda, Singapore, Jetstar, Scoot Air, KLM Malaysia, Qatar, AirAsia, and Turkish Airlines. And so lots of choices, and I expect we'll be getting some more in the coming month. It's getting easier and easier to get here. There's no new news on visas and quarantine, but expect some changes sometime around the 16th of the month with new types of visas and some new prices. And well, we'll just have to wait and see. You know, I don't like to jump the gun, and so I'm waiting for official news on this. The main story this week is that Ramadan started. It started today, and I was woken up at 3:30 by neighborhood kids who were announcing it was time to eat sour. And well, it's going to be going on for the rest of the month. Here in Bali, you won't notice much of a difference. While there's many Muslims living on the island, you know, it's an overwhelmingly Hindu island, and shops, restaurants, etc. all will remain open. It's business as usual here. I've been talking about mudik over the past few weeks, and now that Ramadan started, people are already ramping up to come home, and so I've seen a lot of posts on social media about plans for people to get here. And so there's a segment on mudik and booster shots. So a lot of local news today. Let's get to the numbers, which are good and getting better. National new cases, 2,300. 4,798 national recoveries, and 77 deaths were below 100. That is great. Bali new cases, 38. Pay attention to the segment down below. Koster saying that we're ready to enter the endemic stage. Bali recovers 305, and Bali deaths down to 1. Good news. Good news about the numbers nationally and locally. So let's get to the main story, because I have lots of stuff to do today. We're going to start filming in about an hour on making ayam betutu, and I'm trying to finish up the rendang video that we did last week so I can get it uploaded tonight. And there's also a segment on there on jamu. It's the start of the video, very short, less than 5 minutes for that one, but I put the two together. Ramadan begins Sunday, says government. Okay, well, it's here Sunday now, and it started. The Religious Affairs Ministry announced that this year's fasting month will start on April 3rd. That's it. That was a very short story, but I'm tacking on here an explanation, a very short, brief overview on what Ramadan is for people that aren't familiar with Ramadan. And this comes from the notes on a book that I started writing about Islam a long time ago, and well, it's up to over 600 pages of notes, and I just have not gotten around to putting everything together. Anyway, Ramadan is the month when Muslims fast around the world. It's the 9th month of the Islamic lunar year, and during this month, Muslims fast from dawn to dusk, and they give up eating, drinking, smoking, sexual relations. Muslims are expected to control their relations with other people and not get angry, avoid immoral behavior, not swear, and show compassion to everyone. One of the ideas behind fasting month is to think about what it's like for people that don't have access to food, who go hungry. And this is a way for us as Muslims to remain compassionate to people that have to go without. Fasting during Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, the other 4 making the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca, praying 5 times a day, giving zakat to the poor, and making the announcement of faith. And who fasts during the fasting month? all healthy adults and children from the age of 12 or 13, generally around the time children reach puberty. Some parents start their children fasting early. I don't happen to believe that that's a good idea. They can fast, but children are generally not encouraged to fast a whole day. Some kids like to do little fast, a half a day fast as they're getting up closer to 12 or 13 years old. Some kids fast for a half an hour, an hour. My granddaughter fasted today for about 2 hours, and that was it. People who are elderly, who are sick or pregnant, do not have to fast. However, they should compensate for not fasting by providing a meal for poor people. Muslims wake up really early in the morning, as I said before, 3:30 I got it. It actually wasn't around 4 o'clock when the announcement came hours from the mosque, time to have the morning meal before you begin fasting. The kids here get started early, and not a lot of people are happy about that. The morning meal is known as sahur. Then after the morning meal, people usually go back to bed, and they fast until sunset. At sunset, they open the fast with a meal that's known as iftar. The Prophet Muhammad opened his fast with dates and water, and that's the way that a lot of Muslims start to open their fast, and then after that they have a big meal. Fasting lasts for the entire month, and so this will be going on until just at the start of May. A couple of questions that I get asked: are you allowed to brush your teeth? Yes, you're allowed to brush your teeth, you're just not allowed to swallow the water. Can you go swimming? Yes, you can go swimming, but you're not allowed to swallow the water. And who wants to swallow the seawater anyway? And if you're in a pool, In addition to the 5 daily prayers, which are required, there are special prayers during Ramadan called Tarawih. These are the night prayers, and the length of this prayer can be longer than regular prayers, although some imams say it doesn't have to be longer. Some Muslims spend the entire night praying. On the evening of the 27th of the month, Muslims celebrate the Night of Power. It's believed on this night that Muhammad first received the revelation of the Holy Quran. And according to the Quran, this is when God determines the course of the world for the following year. And then when the fast ends after a month, it is celebrated with what's called Eid al-Fitr, or Lebaran here in Indonesia, and there are different words and different pronunciations in different countries around the world. I was talking to a Turkish friend of mine, and I mentioned Lebaran. He said, "What are you talking about?" So we have different terms. Islam is not a monolithic religion, despite what people think. There are many different streams of Islam, and each country has its own customs that get mixed in with Islam, even though some people deny that that happens. And during Eid al-Fitr, well, everybody gets up very early and they go out and they have a mass prayer. Here in Singaraja, they go to the city park, and you find that around Indonesia. And after the prayer, they come home and they begin visiting people. Gifts are given. Kids come up and they get money. They line up here and get money from me, and I give each of them a gift. It's kind of similar to some of the customs that you find in the Chinese cultures, where kids will get envelopes, red envelopes with money in it. Well, I don't give a red envelope, I just give out the cash, and the kids line up here. And that's a big time. Families and friends all gather together. We will have our family here for Eid al-Fitr, and then people wander around the neighborhood and visiting people and having some meals, some snacks. In some cities around the world, fairs are held to celebrate the end of Ramadan. And so that is your little introduction to Ramadan. If you have any questions about that, feel free to leave a comment and ask me. Okay, let's get on to the rest of the stories for today. And what about this endemic status that I was talking about last time? And here, Indonesia to mull over endemic status if no COVID-19 spike after Eid. The National Task Force for COVID-19 Handling Chair, Lieutenant General Suharyanto, said that discussions on the possibility to shift from pandemic to endemic will be carried out if there's no spike in cases after the Idul Fitri period. He emphasized that it needs to be well thought out and careful. There's many factors to be considered when making a decision about moving from pandemic to endemic status. He said, let's see how the case develops in the future. And he hopes that after the Eid holidays, the COVID-19 trend will not be the same as in the past few years, where there's been a big spike in cases. He said, if there continues to be a slope in cases, we will think about shifting from pandemic to endemic status. With Ramadan already here and started, people are thinking about mudik, and of course, booster shots demand picks up in anticipation of mudik. And so the public demand for COVID-19 vaccines, and especially for the booster shots, have picked up after a series of conflicting announcements about who would be permitted to engage in the Idul Fitri tradition of mudik. That's coming home. President Jokowi first addressed this issue on March 23rd. He said that Muslims could hold congressional prayers, that was okay to gather in the mosque, and the people that wanted to do mudik were welcome to do that too, as long as they received the booster shot. But conflicting information has come out, and in so light of that announcement, a lot of people started getting ready to get booster shots. According to the National COVID-19 Task Force data, booster shots increased by 21% in the week after the president's announcement. So from March 16th to March 23rd, some 3.3 million people received booster shots across the country. The figure increased to 4.18 million people from March 23rd to March 31st. Cumulatively, more than 23 million people in the country have received booster shots. While the president initially said only Indonesians who received booster shots could do mudik, National Disaster Mitigation Agency, BNPB, head Lieutenant General Suharyanto said on Thursday that those who had not yet received a booster shot or who had not completed their primary vaccination course would be allowed to travel. Always conflicting information here. He said domestic travelers who have received 2 COVID-19 vaccination doses must show a negative antigen test taken 24 hours before their trip, or a negative PCR test taken a maximum of 3 days before the trip. Those who received only the first dose would be required to show a negative PCR test taken a maximum of 3 days before the trip, while people who have not been vaccinated because of health reasons need to present a doctor's letter. In addition to the negative PCR test result, he added that travelers who received booster shots and people under the age of 17 would no longer be required to present negative COVID-19 test results prior to their trip. He said the National COVID-19 Task Force would soon formalize the requirements in an official regulation. Always waiting for those official regulations. The Transportation Ministry expects somewhere around 79 people to go on mudik this year, much higher than the pre-pandemic levels of 30 million. And why is that? Well, apparently, according to the Transportation Minister, it's because people haven't been allowed to do mudik for the last 2 years, so everybody wants to do it now. How about some education news? Good news if you are a Jakarta parent. Jakarta schools to return to full capacity classes. We're not doing it here yet, but they're doing it in Jakarta. So the Jakarta administration said that it will resume full classes starting in April as the COVID-19 cases have eased. But some groups are saying be cautious and be slow. According to Jakarta Education Agency spokesperson Taga Rajaga, he said that schools at all educational levels in Jakarta will hold in-person classes, so everybody. According to a joint decree signed by the Education, Culture, Research and Technology Minister, Makarim, last year, schools in areas under level 2 PPKM may operate at full capacity provided that 80% of teachers in the school are vaccinated. Education and Teachers Association, also known as P2G, National Coordinator Pak Salim said that while teachers and students welcomed the plan to reopen the schools, the Jakarta administration should consider a more gradual reopening to allow students to readjust to the necessary health protocols for in-person learning. There's already health protocols going on for partial learning. So what are the differences going to be for full learning? This week, Jakarta's positivity rate, 6%, according to the Jakarta Health Agency data. and it's slightly above the 5% positivity rate used by the WHO as an indicator that an outbreak is under control. Pak Salim urged the Jakarta administration to involve other stakeholders in the reopening plan, such as the local COVID-19 Handling Task Force, the Jakarta Public Order Agency, Satpol PP, and the Jakarta Transportation Agency, in order to ensure that health protocols are strictly observed during classes as well as outside of school. And Teacher Association, PHRI, Deputy Secretary General Dukun Abdul Khodair, said that schools needed to take extra precautions when operating at full capacity. He said that both students and parents needed to refamiliarize themselves with health protocols because previous outbreaks in Jakarta schools had mostly come from students who'd been infected at home. Right, exactly. So why haven't they been in school? They're getting infected at home. They're not getting infected at school. He said schools can prepare the infrastructure, and there also needs to be education and coordination for students and parents. He said, what's the point of keeping schools safe only for parents to disobey these health protocols at home? Indonesian Child Protection Commissioner Retno Listiarti called on the Education Ministry to provide solutions for schools that cannot comply with the social distancing rule for in-person learning. The social distancing rule is each desk is supposed to be 1 meter apart. And she said, what about schools that don't have classrooms that are big enough to accommodate 30 to 40 kids, putting them in 1 meter apart? You have to make some plan for those places. And epidemiologist, our old friend Pak Diki Budiman at Griffith University in Australia, said the government should update the vaccination requirements for teachers to make school reopening more safe. He said we can no longer just talk about full vaccination. School staff also need to get their booster shots, and since the booster shot rollout has remained low, there needs to be extra precautions taken during the reopening. And so how is that going to work? We'll just have to wait and see. And what is Bali doing? No word yet on whether Bali is going to open 100%. Or, as I was talking about in the last video, Ramadan is here today, and prices of cooking oil and sugar rising ahead of Ramadan. Traders, the Indonesian Market Traders Association, ICAPI, said prices of several commodities have increased in line with rising demand: garlic, chicken meat, eggs, sugar, cooking oil, and beef. ICAPI Deputy Secretary General said that the prices could not be prevented from rising due to the drop in the distribution of cooking oil and sugar. He said bulk cooking oil, which is usually distributed 3 to 4 times a week, is now only distributed twice a week, and the distribution of sugar has decreased by up to 40%. Based on ICAPI's report, the price of bulk cooking oil reaches $19,000 to $20,000 per liter, while that of sugar is in the range of $15,000 per kilogram. Additionally, prices of other commodities have seen a surge in demand at approximately 30%. And the price of chicken and beef in the market rose by $1,000 per kilogram to $39,000 and $141,000 respectively. He concluded the price of these commodities are important to be maintained so that before Ramadan, the demand, which is usually up by 50%, can be anticipated. And this happens during all ceremonial periods. The price of goods go up. In the last video, the main stories were about additional airlines coming in, and good news. And here is some more. Plus, Turkish Airlines Ngurah Airport now serves 7 international routes. Last time it was 6, so here's the 7th. Good news, we're getting up there. International flights at Igusti Ngurah International Airport are stretching again. Now the airport has as many as 7 international routes. And it arrived here on Tuesday at 1941 WITA time, and Boeing 787-900 Dreamliner. Turkish Airlines will be flying 3 times a week, and it's the only airline that will be flying from Istanbul. According to Harry Cicado, the general manager of PT Angkasa Pura I, Igusti Ngurah Airport, International Airport, he said the Turkish Airlines with flight number THY 066 from Istanbul to Denpasar carried 288 passengers, and it returned to Istanbul at 2100 WITA with 208 passengers. And Turkish Airlines will be flying every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And PHRI appreciates all entities that have made efforts so that international flights can continue to run smoothly. The passenger flow process does not take too long to go through because technically all requirements have been digitized. Okay, and I've heard some good news so far about arriving and not having to wait too long. If you've come in recently and you want to leave a comment, always welcome because, well, it helps people that are coming in, giving them some sense of what to expect. PHRI said, we remain optimistic that this achievement will increase in time with International Flight Operations Health Protocol. And he said that for a percentage comparison of international flights since operational activities resumed from February 3rd, 2022 to March 29th, 2022, statistics are 28,535 passengers have come in compared to the previous year, and there is an increase of 5,419%. Good news, good news. And some more on international tourists, and in this case, tourists from ASEAN countries, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, of which Indonesia is a part. Accelerating the awakening of Bali, PHRI proposes visa-free for ASEAN countries. This was stated by the Deputy Chair of the Environmental Culture and Public Relations Division of the Regional Management Board of the Indonesian Hotel and Restaurant Association, Ngurah Surawijaya, and I've talked about him before. He clarified free visa and VOA are different. VOA for foreign travelers entering Bali must pay 500,000 rupiahs when they arrive at the airport, and the free visa does not need to be paid. He said, we propose free visas as before. In the past, Indonesia provided free visas for ASEAN countries who came to Indonesia, and up to 14 million people in 2019, and those to Bali reached 6.3 million. And that is pretty much a general practice in ASEAN, that if you are ASEAN country, you can go back and forth into other ASEAN countries visa-free, and so I would expect this to be adopted. According to PHRI Wijaya, the visa-free for countries in ASEAN will have a positive impact on hotel occupancy in Bali because ASEAN tourists can travel directly to Indonesia, especially to the island of Bali. And he added that Bali needs to continue to expand the VOA to European Union countries that have not been included on the list and increase international airlines every day. He said, with this step, for 2022, this increase can reach up to 40% by the end of the year. In 2023, it will start to rise again. We can recover. According to him, the proposal for a free visa for ASEAN countries will be submitted to Presidential Chief of Staff at a meeting with President Jokowi. And currently, with the application of visa on arrival and free quarantine, the hotel occupancy rate is up to 25% now. Previously, only 15%. In addition, the arrival of foreign tourists per day is approaching 1,000. More good news. I love doing good news videos. If you're a regular viewer here, you remember there were some really, really depressing videos here where I was just down and the news was just terrible. And now we're looking up, and so let's keep smiling. And last video I said I was going to talk about this. There's some things going on here with beachfront land, seafront land, and being 100 meters setback from high tide. Well, here's 2 articles on this, and some of them are a recap of something that I've talked about before, and some of this is new. Balinese reclaim their land beach by beach. So there have been reports in the Bali media and on BaliDiscovery.com about the official investigation into the alleged violation of setback regulations and the expropriation of public beachfront on Malacity Beach in the Unggasan Peninsula. Now, new reports have come out that the Badung Enforcement Agency, Satpol PP Badung, has identified around 30 warungs and cafes on Barawa Beach operating without the required licenses and standing illegally on public beachfront. And this has been talked about in several videos. The monkeys talked about this recently when they were down in Canggu. I Gusti Ketut Suryandragara, the chief of Satpol PP Badung, confirmed that 30-odd illegal businesses have been discovered on Barawa Beach and are violating setback rules and are unlicensed. And back on the 18th, and that may be when I was talking about this the first time, there was a meeting between South Pole officials and representatives from 4 traditional communities, and they reached an agreement with local operators to dismantle and demolish the illegal bars and warungs, and I talked about that. The minutes from the meeting stipulate that the demolition of these businesses will take place between April 1st and 15th of May. And Surya Nagara warned business owners in those locations not to violate the rules on using public right-of-way and the need to license their operations. He reminded illegal business owners that beaches belong to the nation, and so this is a key point of contention. Violators were warned that firm action would be taken against them. Meanwhile, the traditional community chief, the Rebecca Imade Kamajaya, has confirmed that the illegal businesses are preparing to demolish their structures. He admitted that some of the illegal structures were built by local residents who often rented out the buildings to outsiders, including foreigners. And more on this issue, Bali hotels and restaurants on shaky grounds. So according to this article in Bali Discovery, there is a frequent legal property dispute between village officials and provincial administrations over who has the final word over so-called public land. And this is not just new, this is new in these specific cases, but this has been going on since I've been here. That's 32 years, coming on 33 years. I'm not going to mention the places, but up in Bulalang, this has been going on for a long time. In Bali, traditional village officials often enter into written contracts with investors, granting exemptions from the established law and allowing private investors' occupation and use of public lands. Meanwhile, private investors faced with zoning restrictions and prohibitions on beachfront and riverside tracts of land will often offer the village officials inducements via employment guarantees to village residents and substantial rental payments for the right to use lands otherwise banned from private use. Villagers and local officials view the beachfront lands as part of their ancestral legacy and within their rights to use and dispose of it as they please. In contrast, provincial, regency, and municipal officials insist that any public lands are forever held by the people and that national, provincial, and regional laws take precedence, barring local officials from allocating these lands to private investors. And so if you are ever down in a beach area and somebody comes by and says, you can't walk on this beach, or you can't sit here because this is owned by the hotel, it depends on where it's located on the beach. A lot of times hotels claim this, or their security claims this, and actually they're violating the law. In the case in point, the region of Badung Nyoman Gira Prasta has filed a complaint with the Denpasar Police Precinct, naming a group of 7 investors and the traditional chief, Bandesa, of Ungasan, Wayan Disel Dawa, for the misappropriation of land used by the Karma Kandara private beach club. And that beach club burned down late last year. And so when officials came to view this thing, they said, there's some stuff that's not right here. And so they started doing some investigations, and this has opened up a whole can of worms. Preliminary findings by the team that came to investigate the site after the fire raised issues regarding the club's violation of the 100-meter setback rule from the high water mark. They also questioned the lack of permits for a business built on public right-of-way. Reports in the local press pointed to a familiar pattern of development in Bali where local officials enter into a formal contract receiving often substantial sums of money from groups of private investors. The regent has refused requests from the village elders to withdraw his police report. He insists he will not compromise and asks that the courts make a final determination on the lease of the land by the village, which was not their land to sell or rent in the first place, according to him. Continuing on, he said Indonesia is a nation of laws, and he said the role and powers of the traditional village administrations must be made clear. So this is an issue about Desa Adat, and you've probably heard a lot about this. The regent told the press that the case reveals many mistakes. First, the land involved is national land, raising the question if local village officials have any right to grant land use permission to private investors. The regent also noted that the land in question and its lease to private investors includes a formal notarial act and a payment of 28 billion rupiahs. Okay, there's a lot of money there. Prasta added, in the beginning there were only 2 businesses, and then developed to become 7 companies. I don't accept this, and I see Indian Notarial Act for 28 billion rupees or more. That's what was placed on the table. We don't know if anything was paid under the table. Ooh. Prasta said the matter is now before the police, the ombudsman, and the anti-corruption agency. He said, let's discuss this before the courts. And the final disposition in this case may have far-reaching effects in Bali, according to the article, where many hotels, restaurants, and villas have broken right-of-way setback rules, height restrictions, and building codes by seeking approval from the surrounding community. And there have been arguments, quite heated ones, here in Mull about people who rent villas that are right on the beach and are told that that's private beach, and when they try to keep locals from using it, wow, it sets off a huge fuss. And I've reported on a number of cases of that back last year, 2 years ago, maybe as long as 2 years ago now. This is a hot topic, and as the conclusion here says, whatever happens here can really, really have some effects on how Bali is going to progress in the future. And here's something from Governor Koster. Governor Koster calls Bali entering transition towards endemic. So the governor is maybe a little ahead of the rest of the country. The governor said, looking at the curve pattern from 2020, 2021, and now 2022, I think we've actually entered the endemic position. Okay, Mr. Public Health Expert. He discussed the data, and he said that there were only 40 new cases on Wednesday, and then 30 people recovered, and there were no fatalities. On the average, he said, current cases are consistently in the double digits, which is true. Additionally, he said, the booster vaccination in Bali has reached 50.3%. The coverage of first vaccination, he said, is at 104%, and the coverage for the second vaccination is at 95%. He added that the arrival of tourists since the opening of Bali to international flights on February 4th has had no impact on new cases. And additionally, the abolition of quarantine for travelers from abroad arriving in Bali has had no effect on the increase in cases. He said, I think this is appropriate and must be maintained. So the governor said we're transitioning to the endemic phase. I wonder what epidemiologists in Bali have to say about that. I'll be looking for some information, and if anybody reads some, comes across some information on how epidemiologists are responding to the governor, please leave a comment. I'd like to see it. Alcohol sales in Bali up 24% as tourist visits surge. Okay, there's some good news. Alcohol sales. The Bali Regional Directorate General of Customs and Excise reported that liquor sales on the island of the gods reached 754.24 billion as of Tuesday, March 29th. This figure is up 24.84% compared to the same period in 2021, which amounted to 604.14 billion. Not that much, up 24%. Well, 24% is not bad, but as we've got people streaming in here, and especially when we get the Australians coming in here, alcohol sales are going to go way up. Not that Aussies drink a lot. The head of the Bali, NTB, and NTT Customs and Excise Regional Office, Susila Brata, said the increase was reflected in the alcohol excise income in Bali. The increase in alcohol excise shows an increase in alcohol consumption by tourists in Bali. This is one of the indicators that economy and tourism in Bali are starting to recover and bounce back. Yes. And Cecilia added that with the increase in alcohol sales, excise revenues in Bali began to rise. For February 22, for example, excise revenues have reached 102.32 billion. Good news, the economy is rebounding, and I hope people are getting jobs. And it's time for an update and a wrap-up. No update, there's nothing new that I've seen today of special interest, and this is a long video anyway. Let's get to the wrap-up. The wrap-up is, wow, good news. Good. It's another good news video. The weather is still, well, not the best, but I'm sure that if you've come here, you're just happy to be here and you don't mind a few hours or a whole night or an afternoon of rain, and it will get better soon, let's hope. Numbers are looking good, people are coming in. And so there's not much to wrap up today. Prices are going up some, but everything is looking good and expecting things to get better and better and better. Other countries around the world are opening up. Korea's opening up, and Singapore, of course, and There's some stuff going on in Thailand, and I'll talk about that in the next video. If you found this video useful, informative, amusing, non-irritating, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Videos are updated Wednesday and Sunday, and we do a cooking video every Sunday. And I will be down in Sanur in another 3 weeks to visit one of the viewers here who is a frequent commenter, and I'm looking forward to that. And I had a couple of fun visits with Frankie, who's a frequent contributor here, who is here wandering around the island and having a really good time. And so if you come in and you would like to get together, just let me know. I'm always happy to meet people and share information and experiences. And that's it for today. Thanks for viewing. Be kind to someone, stay safe, and I will see you on Wednesday.